Hi guys, this is lesson 2 in unit 8. We're going to talk about solving quadratics by factoring. Before we start about talking about solving quadratics by factoring, I want to talk about one more a property of real numbers that we didn't talk about. And this property of real numbers is the zero product property. The zero product property says if two or more terms have a product of 0, then at least one of them is equal to 0. What does that mean? It means that if we have x times y equals 0, that means we have two factors, x and y, multiplied by each other and equal to 0. This rule, or the zero product property, says that if x times y equals 0, then x equals 0 or y equals 0, or both are equal to 0. The solutions are called the zeros, x-intercepts, the roots, and this is and these are the one of the properties of quadratics that we talked about last time when we graphed. Let's take a look at our first example. In this example, we have 3x equals 0. This means that we have two factors, 3 and x, and their product is equal to 0. Based on the zero product property, that means that either the first factor equal to 0, which means 3 equal to 0, which is not a true statement, or x is equal to 0. So in this case, the solution for this equation is x equals 0. Let's take a look at our second example. In our second example, we have x times y equals 0. This means that we have two factors, x and y, and their product is equal to 0. And based on the zero product property again, this means that either x equal to 0 or y equal to 0 or both are equal to 0, which means that the solution is x equals 0 or y equals 0. Let's take a look at example number 3. We have x times x minus 1 equals 0, which means that we have two factors, x and x minus 1, and their product is equal to 0. So based on the zero product property, we can say that either x equal to 0 or x minus 1 equal to 0. So the first solution is right there. We have it right there, x equals 0. And now all we need to do is to solve the other or the second part to be able to find the value of x. So x minus 1 equal to 0, that means I need to add 1 to both sides of the equation, and I'm going to end up with x equals 1, which is the second solution. So we have two roots, two solutions, two x-intercepts, two zeros, which is x equals 0 and or x minus 1. Now let's find out if the solutions that we got using factoring and the zero product property are correct or not by checking it graphically. So we're going to use our calculator and we're going to put the equation on y equals. So I'm going to have y equals x times x minus 1 and then I know that the solution has to be 0, so I'm gonna look at the table and I need to find the answers for x when y is equal to 0. So if you look in your calculator, you'll find out that the first value is 0, 0. That means the first x value is 0, and the second x value is 1. Because for both of these x values, we have the y equal to 0. I'm looking at the graph. This is what we see, a parabola that crosses the x-axis in two places. The first x value where the graph crossed the x-axis is at 0, and the second one is at 1. Example number 4. Now this time we have x plus 1 times x minus 2 equals 0. Again, this means that either the first factor, x plus 1, equal to 0, or the second factor, which is x minus 2, is equal to 0. So we're going to put this down as x plus 1 equals 0 or x minus 2 equal to 0. And we're going to solve each part separate and then find out the value of x. So let's start with the first part, x plus 1 equal to 0. We take away 1 from both sides and we end up with x equals negative 1. So that's the first solution. And then we start working with the second part, x minus 2 equals 0. That means we're adding 2 to both sides of the equation, and we end up with x equals 2. So the solutions, the zeros, the x-intercepts, or the roots are x equals negative 1 or x equals 2. So now I'm going to check the solution graphically. So I'm going to clear my calculator, and I'm going to add in my equation, which is x plus 1 times x minus 2. And again, this is a quadratic. And we should end up with a graph of a parabola when we hit the graph button. And the solutions, which are also called the x-intercepts, should be the values of 2 and negative 1. So let's take a look at the calculator to see if that's what we're going to get. So looking at this parabola, the first x-intercept is negative 1, the second one is 2, and this is exactly what I want. Looking at the table, I'm going to have to look for the x values where the y value is 0. And looking at the table, I see that if I go up, I see that for x equals negative 1, the y is 0, and for x equals 2, the y is 0. That means that I was correct. My x values are negative 1 and 2. Now let's take a look at example number 5. This time we have a quadratic, x squared minus 7x equal to 0. We don't have factors, but we learned in Unit 7 that we can factor this quadratic using GCF. So if we use GCF, we're going to end up with factors, which product is equal to 0, and we can use the zero product property to be able to solve. So using GCF, I'm going to factor this quadratic into x times x minus 7. That means I end up with two factors, x and x minus 7, and these two factors has a product of 0. So now it's safe to say that it's either x equal to 0 or x minus 7 equal to 0. So the first part is already done for us. That's the first value for x. And the second part is a simple one-step equation where we have to add 7 to both sides, and we end up with x equals 7, which is the second zero for this equation, or the second x-intercept, or the second row. So the solution is x equals 0 or x equals 7. Let's check our answer graphically. So I'm going to put x squared and y equals, I'm going to put x square minus 7x, and I'm going to look at the graph. So in the graph, I should see two x-intercepts, x equals 0 and x equals 7. So let's take a look at the graph. We have x equals 0, that's the first intercept or the solution, and the second one is x equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's take a look at the table, and if we look at the table, we'll see that, or we should see that we have two x values with a y of 0, x equals 0, which is right here, and x equals 7, which is right here. That means that our work is correct. Now let's take a look at one more example where we have x squared plus 5x plus 6 equal to 0. Again, this is a quadratic, and to solve this quadratic and find the value of x, I can use factoring to use the zero product property. And to factor this quadratic, I can use guess and check, or the sum and product. So in this situation, I need to think of two numbers. If I multiply, I get 6, and if I add, I get 5, which make me think of 2 and 3. So my two factors for this quadratic are x plus 2 and x plus 3. Since the equation is equal to 0, that means I can use the zero product property to say that x plus 2 equal to 0 or x plus 3 equal to 0. And the first part, I'm looking at the first part of these two equations. All I need to do is to take away 2 from both sides of the equation, and I'm going to end up with the first value of x, which is x equals to -2. And for the other part of the equation, all I can do is take away 3 from both sides of the equation, and I'm going to end up with x equals -3. So the solutions, the roots, the x-intercept for this quadratic is x equal -2 or x equal -3. Now let's check our work graphically. We have y equals. I'm going to clear the calculator, and we're going to put our equation, which is x squared plus 5x plus 6, and this is a quadratic. We should see a parabola on the graph. The parabola should cross the x-axis in two places, in -3 and -2. This is, and hopefully this is what we will see. We have two x-intercepts, -2 and -3. Perfect, that means our work is correct. And then if we look at the table, we should see that we have two x values with a y value of 0. And looking at the table, and yes, looking at the table, we'll find out that we have two x values, -3 and -2, where the y is equal to 0.